Don't close the door, please. I'm English. I need your help.
He was shot down on a Thursday. He was captured on Friday morning in a farmyard outside a village in northern France whose name he later learned, but that at the time of the capture was simply a place. The specific place where the specific German soldiers found him in the specific condition of a man who had bailed out a burning aircraft at 4,000 feet, and who had walked through night, and who had arrived in the specific gray of the French dawn at the specific farmyard fence. He was put on a train on Saturday, a prison train, heading east toward Germany and the specific interrogation center that the Luftwaffe maintained for captured Allied airmen. He was in a compartment with 2 guards and 2 other prisoners, an American from a different unit, and an Australian whose name he never learned because the Australian did not speak during the time they were together. He escaped on Saturday night, through the window of the compartment. The specific window that he had spent the journey assessing, the specific latch that he had spent the journey watching the guard not watching, into the French countryside, in the dark, at speed, rolling down embankment and coming to rest in a ditch. He walked through the night. He was picked up the following morning, Sunday, by a French farmer whose specific network of connections eventually produced a specific chain of the resistance that got him back to England. He was back at his base on Wednesday. He flew on Thursday. 1 week, exactly, from the Thursday he was shot down to the Thursday. He flew again. In between the capture, the train, the escape, the French farmer, the resistance chain, the specific days of the moving from place to place that the escape network required, the debriefing at the base, the medical clearance, the specific bureaucratic processes of the RAF that had to be completed before a recovered pilot could return to duty. He completed all of them and flew on Thursday. Before I tell you the rest of his story, I want to ask you directly, subscribe and share this episode if it's giving you something. This series is about the specific human stories that the official history compresses into the general account. The specific people in the specific moments with the specific weight of the specific experience. Subscribe and hit the like button. Back to him. Back to the pilot, who flew again the next week. The specific other pilots whose stories I want to tell, the other men who were shot down and who came back and who flew again, represent a range of the specific response to the specific experience, and the range illuminates George's specific position within it. There was an American pilot from the 8th Air Force, the strategic bombing force that flew the daylight precision bombing missions against German industrial targets from 1942 to 1945, who was shot down on his 12th mission over Germany in 1943, and who spent the remainder of the war as a prisoner at Stalag Luft III. He came home in 1945. He never flew again, not combat, not commercially, not recreationally. He made a specific decision after the camp that the flying was done, and he honored the decision for the rest of his life. He was not a coward. He was not broken by the captivity in the dramatic way of the broken person. He built a full life, a career, a family, all the specific things that the full post-war life required. He simply decided that what the flying had asked of him was enough, and that the life he was going to live was going to be on the ground, and that the specific decision was a specific, right one for the specific person he was after the specific experience he had been through. This is a different form of courage from George's form, and I want to be clear about this, because the story of the pilot who flew again has a specific dramatic energy that makes it easy to read as a heroic story at the expense of the story of the pilot who decided not to fly again. The pilot who decided not to fly again had also been shot down, had also been in the camp, had also made a specific decision in the full awareness of the specific cost of the specific experience. His decision was to stop. It was as deliberate and as self-aware as George's decision to continue. The specific difference between the two decisions was not the courage. It was the specific self-knowledge. George's self-knowledge told him that stopping would produce the specific accumulating weight that he had watched destroy the men who paused. The American self-knowledge told him that continuing would produce the specific ongoing cost that he had decided he was not going to pay. Both of them were right about themselves. Both of them acted on the specific knowledge. The third pilot I want to tell you about is the one whose story is most difficult and most instructive. He was an RAF pilot who was shot down twice and who kept flying after both, who had the specific combination of George's self-knowledge and the specific additional element of the genuine love of the flying that some pilots carry as the specific thing that makes the specific cost bearable. He loved the flying. not in the specific sense of the adventurous young man who had wanted to fly since childhood and for whom the RAF was the specific fulfillment of the specific dream. He had not particularly wanted to fly before the war. He had gone to the training and had discovered, in the training, the specific quality of the flying that he had not anticipated. The specific freedom of the air, the specific experience of the aircraft as an extension of the body, the specific pleasure of the mastery of the specific skill. He described this in the memoir he wrote in the late 1970s. The specific way the flying felt, the specific sensory experience of the aircraft at altitude, the specific quality of the skill's mastery that made the specific demands of the combat flying not simply a burden, but also, in some dimension, an occasion for the specific thing he had come to love. He was not indifferent to the danger. He was not masking the fear with the love. The fear and the love coexisted in him, in the specific way that the fear and the love coexist in many of the specific things worth doing, the specific knowledge of the cost and the specific value of the thing that makes the cost worth paying. He flew because he was afraid, and also because he loved the flying. And the love was a specific additional reason beyond the duty and the George-type prevention of the pause that made the specific decision to fly less heavy. He survived the war. He flew commercially for 30 years. He retired and flew recreationally until his mid-70s. He died in 2001. His son described him as a man who was most fully himself in the air, who brought to the ordinary ground-bound life a specific presence and a specific capability, but who was recognizably more himself at altitude than at sea level. The flying had cost him specific things. 2 shootings down, the specific accumulated fear of the specific missions, the specific weight of the friends who did not come back, the specific empty seats in the mess, the specific names crossed off the roster. He paid these costs. He loved the flying anyway. The love and the cost coexisted in the same life for 30 years of the commercial flying, and the 15 years of the recreational flying, and the 75 years of the life. This is a specific range of the specific experience. The George who flew again because he knew that not flying would produce a specific worse outcome. The American who stopped because he knew that continuing would produce the specific wrong outcome for the specific person he was. And the pilot who flew because he was afraid, and also because the flying was a specific thing he had found in the war that he was not going to let the war take from him. All 3 are real. All 3 are specific forms of the specific response to the specific experience. The history of the combat pilot has tended to honor the forms that produce the continued flying. The Battle of Britain survivors, the bomber pilots who flew the required number of missions, the fighter aces who kept going back. This is appropriate. The continued flying was a specific form of the specific contribution that the specific war required, and the people who provided it deserve the specific honor. The American who came home from Stalag Luft 3 and never flew again deserves honor too. The specific honor of the person who knew himself clearly enough to make the specific right decision for the specific person he was, in the specific circumstances of the specific experience. His decision did not contribute to the war effort after the camp. It contributed to the specific person he was able to be for the next 50 years, and to the specific life he built, and to the specific family that benefited from the specific person he was able to be because he had made the specific right decision. All of them came home. All of them built lives. All of them carried the specific experience in the specific form that the specific person required. George flew on Thursday. That is the specific story of this episode. But the American who stopped flying is also in the story, because the story of the specific courage requires a specific acknowledgement that the specific courage takes different forms in the specific people who are called to exercise it, and that the form of George's courage was not the only honorable one. He flew on Thursday. That is the story. The American who did not is also part of the story. Both of them knew themselves. Both of them acted on what they knew. That is the full accounting of the specific courage of the specific pilots of the Second World War. The specific escape from the train, the specific window, the specific Saturday night, the specific French countryside, deserves to be told in more detail, because it is not simply a dramatic incident in the story. It is a specific act that produced a specific knowledge that the specific Thursday flying required. He had been watching the window since they put him in the compartment, not the window in the dramatic sense of the escape plan. He had not arrived on the train with a plan to escape through the window. He had arrived on the train in the specific condition of a recently captured pilot who was being moved to interrogation, and the watching of the window was a specific automatic response of a specific kind of person to the specific kind of situation. He assessed, he watched, he noted the latch, the guard's pattern of attention, the speed of the train, the darkness outside. The assessment did not immediately produce a plan. The plan emerged from the assessment over the course of the journey. The specific accumulation of the specific observations into the specific conclusion that the specific window was the specific possibility, not a guaranteed possibility, not a certain one, a specific possibility that required the specific willingness to go through the window into the specific unknown of the French countryside at night at train speed and accept the specific consequences of whatever the landing produced. He went through the window. The landing produced a road descent down an embankment and a ditch in the specific assessment, lying in the ditch of the specific condition of the specific body. Nothing broken, cuts and bruises sufficient to be inconvenient and insufficient to be incapacitating. He stood up. He began to walk. The specific walking through the French countryside on a Saturday night in 1943, as a downed British pilot in occupied territory with no papers, is a specific experience that the escape and evasion literature of the Second World War documents with considerable detail, both the first-person accounts of the pilots who went through it and the analytical accounts of the intelligence historians who have studied the evasion networks that made the escapes possible. The specific character of the experience, the specific combination of the acute awareness of the danger and the specific absence of any option other than moving forward, is one that the pilots who went through it describe in consistent terms. There was no alternative to moving. Staying in the ditch was a specific form of capture that was slower than the immediate capture and no less certain. Moving was a specific form of the only action available. He moved. He moved through the night in the direction of southwest, the direction of Spain, where the escape networks could get him across the border, the direction away from Germany, where the train had been going. He moved by the stars. He had been trained in the specific navigation techniques that the RAF taught for exactly the situation. The training that was designed for exactly the possibility that the escape and evasion reality had produced. He used the training. He moved. The French farmer found him in the morning, or rather George found the French farmer, walked up to the specific farmhouse at the end of the specific night's walking, in the specific condition of a man who needed to make a choice about who to trust in a country where the wrong choice about who to trust was a specific form of a second capture. The French farmer took him in. The resistance network, the specific chain of people who move him from the specific farmhouse through the specific series of safe houses to the specific point where the specific mechanism of the escape route produced a specific passage back to England, is a story that the evasion narratives of the period tell in the specific general terms that the security of the surviving participants required. George could not name the specific people who moved him. He did not know most of their names. He knew their faces. He knew the specific quality of the specific risk they were taking on his behalf. The specific knowledge that the French civilian who had a downed RAF pilot was taking a specific risk that was not the pilot's risk to take on their behalf, and that the specific taking of it was the specific act of the specific courage that had nothing to do with the flying. He wrote about this in the memoir with more emotion than he brought to the accounts of his own specific actions. The specific people who hit him, who opened their specific houses to the specific danger that his presence imposed, were, in his account, the specific people whose courage most affected him, not the combat, not the escape. The French farmer who looked at the disheveled British pilot in his specific doorway at the specific dawn and made the specific calculation that led to the specific decision to take him in. That courage, the specific civilian courage of the specific ordinary person in the specific occupied country, was the courage that stayed with him. He could not name them. He honored them in the memoir in the specific form that was available. The specific description of the specific quality of the specific acts, without the specific names that the security of the specific people required. The record has the acts. The record has the courage. The names on the files of the intelligence services that documented the escape networks in the specific form that the specific security required. He came back to England. He debriefed. He received the medical clearance. He completed the specific administrative requirements. He flew on Thursday. The specific week, from the Thursday shooting down to the Thursday flying again, had given him specific knowledge that the months and years of the previous combat flying had given him in a different form. He had known before the week that he could be shot down. The abstract knowledge was present in everything he did, in the training, in the briefings, in the specific preparation that the RAF required for the specific combat flying. He had known. After the week, he knew differently. He knew the specific farmyard and the specific train, and the specific window and the specific ditch. He knew the specific walking through the French countryside at night. He knew the specific French farmer in the specific doorway. He knew the specific chain of the specific people who had moved him back. The specific knowing, the conversion of the abstract knowledge into the specific concrete experience, had produced a specific additional weight that the Thursday flying had to carry. He was not fly in the presence of the abstract knowledge of the possible. He was fly in the presence of the specific concrete memory of the actual, the shot down, the capture, the train, the window, the ditch, the walking, the farm, the chain. All of this was now specific, and the specific weight of it was a specific weight that the Thursday cockpit had to contain. He contained it. He flew. The specific psychological mechanism by which a person who has been through a specific frightening experience returns to the specific activity that produced it has been studied in the context of combat aviation and in the broader context of the psychology of fear and the management of traumatic experience. The research identifies several specific patterns, some functional, some not, and George's specific pattern was, by the analysis of the historians and the psychologists who have examined it, one of the more effective. The functional approach, the one George described and implemented, is characterized by the specific acknowledgement of the fear and the specific refusal to allow the fear to determine the action. This is different from suppressing the fear, which is a different pattern with different consequences. George did not suppress the fear. He acknowledged it explicitly in the memoir, in terms that leave no ambiguity about the specific quality of the specific experience. He was afraid. He knew he was afraid. He flew anyway. The specific decision, the specific, if I don't fly on Thursday, I'm not going to fly again, is a specific articulation of the specific insight that the functional approach requires. He had understood from watching the other pilots who had taken the pause, what the pause produced. He had decided that the specific production of the pause was the specific thing he was not going to allow. He flew on Thursday as a specific act of prevention, not the prevention of the enemy, but the prevention of the pause becoming permanent. This is a specific form of the self-knowledge that his son described as the most remarkable quality of his father's character. He knew what he was afraid of, and he knew what the fear, if left unaddressed in the specific way of the pause, would produce. He addressed it in the specific way that the specific knowledge required. He flew. The 43 subsequent missions, the specific ongoing flying after Thursday, were each their own specific version of the same decision. Each one required the same specific act of the will, in the presence of the same specific knowledge. The knowledge did not diminish after the Thursday. If anything, it increased. The second shooting down in Belgium in 1944 added another specific layer to the specific, concrete knowledge of what being shot down was actually like. He flew after Belgium too. The same specific reason, the same specific decision. The war ended. He flew commercially for 22 more years. He retired. He wrote the memoir. The memoir is in the record, the specific account of the specific Thursday, the specific fear and the specific decision and the specific reason, is there for anyone who needs it. He was afraid. He flew anyway. He knew why. He wrote it down. That is a full accounting so far of the pilot who flew again the next week. His name was George. He had been a pilot in the RAF since 1940, one of the young men who had gone through the specific rapid training of the early war years, when the RAF was producing pilots faster than it could have wished because the losses were running faster than anyone had anticipated. He had fought in the Battle of Britain as a 20-year-old. In the specific conditions of the first year of the war, when the RAF was fighting the Luftwaffe over the English Channel and over southern England with aircraft that were barely adequate and pilots that were barely trained. He had survived the Battle of Britain, one of the specific minority of the pilots who went through it who were still flying at the end of it. The specific attrition rate of the Battle of Britain pilots is one of the most sobering statistics in the history of air combat. The average life expectancy of a new fighter pilot in the Battle of Britain was measured in weeks rather than months, and the specific pilots who survived the full course of the battle were the specific people who had the specific combination of exceptional skill, exceptional luck, and the specific psychological quality that keeps a person flying conditions designed to kill them. George had all three. The skill was evident from his combat record, the specific engagements, the specific aircraft, the specific outcomes. The luck was evident from the fact that he was still alive in 1943 when the shooting down happened. The specific psychological quality, the thing that is harder to name, the specific quality that gets a man back into the cockpit after the burning aircraft and the parachute and the French farmyard, is what this story is about. The specific psychology of the combat pilot who keeps flying after being shot down is one of the more studied aspects of Second World War aviation psychology. And the research reveals something that is both obvious and genuinely remarkable. The pilots who went back up after being shot down were not, in general, people who were indifferent to the danger. They were people who were very aware of the danger and who had decided, deliberately and consciously, that the danger was not sufficient reason to stop. This is a specific distinction that matters. The pilot who does not experience fear and therefore keeps flying is not demonstrating courage. He is demonstrating the specific absence of the accurate assessment of the situation that fear provides. The pilot who experiences the accurate assessment and keeps flying anyway is demonstrating something real. The specific act of the will that chooses the action in the presence of the accurate knowledge of what the action costs. George was afraid. He said so in the memoir he wrote in 1978. The specific late career accounting of a specific wartime experience that many of the surviving pilots produced in the years when the distance was sufficient to allow the specific honesty about what the experience had actually been. He was afraid when he was shot down. He was afraid when he bailed out. He was afraid in the specific conditions of the French farmyard, the specific German soldiers, the specific not knowing whether the capture was going to end in the way that most captures ended or in one of the ways that some captures ended that were worse. He was afraid on the train. He was afraid when he went to the window, the specific split-second fear of the moving train, the specific darkness outside the window, the specific not knowing what was on the other side of the latch. He was afraid walking to the French countryside, the specific fear of a man who is in occupied territory with no papers and no cover story and no clear direction, and who knows that the specific Germans who are looking for him are more familiar with the specific terrain than he is. He was afraid on the Thursday when he flew again. He flew anyway, not because the fear had diminished. The specific week of the specific events had produced a specific additional reason to be afraid, had given the abstract danger of being shot down the specific concrete content of the specific farmyard and the specific train compartment and the specific French countryside at night. The fear was more specific after the week than it had been before it. He flew anyway. The specific reason he gives in the memoir for flying on that Thursday, the specific account of the specific decision, is one I want to examine carefully because it illuminates something important about the specific psychology of the pilot who keeps going back. He said, "If I didn't fly on Thursday, I was not going to fly again." This is not the heroic formulation. The heroic formulation would be, I flew because my country needed me, because my comrades needed me, because the mission required it. These things were true. They were not, he said, the specific reason he flew on Thursday. The specific reason was a specific knowledge that if he waited, if he allowed the specific week to become the specific reason for a pause, a medical leave, a period of recuperation, the pause would become permanent. He knew this about himself. He had watched it happen to other pilots. The specific good pilots who had been shot down and who had taken the pause that the RAF offered and who had found, in the pause, that the specific fear had become the specific obstacle that the pause had made it into, who had found, in other words, that the week they did not fly had made the following week harder, and the week after that harder still, and that the accumulating weight of the not flying had eventually become heavier than the specific fear that the flying required. He did not want that weight. He had seen what it did to the people who acquired it. He flew on Thursday to avoid acquiring it, to keep the specific act of flying in the specific register of the things he did, rather than allowing to migrate to the register of the things that used to be possible and no longer were. This is a specific form of the specific courage that the Thursday flying represents. Not the courage of the indifferent, not the courage of the unaware. The courage of the man who is fully aware of what the week has shown him about the specific cost of flying, and who gets into the cockpit anyway. because not getting into the cockpit is a specific thing he has decided he is not going to do. He flew 43 more missions after Thursday. He was shot down one more time, in 1944, over Belgium, and he was not captured that time. He evaded immediately and was back at base within 2 weeks. He flew after that too. He ended the war with a specific record that the specific decorations acknowledge. The DFC and BAR, the specific formal recognition of the specific operational contribution of the specific pilot over the specific years of the specific conflict. He survived. He came home. He went on to fly commercially for 22 years, retiring from Boise in 1967. He wrote the memoir in 1978. He died in 1994 at 74 years old. His son described him at the funeral as the most self-aware person he had ever known. The specific quality of the man who understood himself clearly enough to know what he was afraid of and what he needed to do about it, and who acted on that understanding consistently throughout his life. The memoir is in several libraries. The specific account of the specific Thursday, the specific day he flew again after the week that most people who have not been through it cannot fully imagine, is in the record. The specific honesty of the account, the specific admission of the fear, and the specific account of the specific decision is what makes the memoir worth reading and what makes the story worth telling. He was afraid. He flew anyway. He knew why he flew. He wrote it down. That is a full accounting of the pilot who flew again the next week. That is a specific form of the specific courage that the specific story contains. The sky took him back. He let it. The specific broader context of what the combat pilots of the Second World War represented. The specific demographic, the specific training, the specific culture of the combat aviation community illuminates the specific experience of the individual pilot within it. The RAF in the Second World War drew its combat pilots from a specific pool, young men primarily with a specific combination of physical capability, psychological aptitude, and social opportunity that the specific program required. The specific social character of the RAF Pilot Corps, more socially diverse than the pre-war RAF, more meritocratic than the Army's Officer Corps, the specific combination of the middle-class graduate and the working-class boy who had the specific test scores that the specific aptitude assessment identified, produced a specific community of the specific people doing the specific work in the specific way that the specific combination of backgrounds made possible. The 8th Air Force drew its pilots from an even more diverse pool, the specific American democracy of talent that the specific mass mobilization of the Second World War produced, the boys from the farms of the Midwest and the factories of the industrial East and the universities of coastal cities, brought together by the specific aptitude tests and the specific training program and the specific demands of the war. Both communities, the RAF and the 8th Air Force, produced a specific phenomenon of the shot-down pilot who flew again and the shot-down pilot who did not, in proportions that the specific records document. The specific study of the return of flying rates after being shot down, conducted by the British and American Air Forces during the war and by historians afterward, reveals a pattern that is both intuitive and instructive. The specific pilots most likely to return to flying after being shot down were, in general, the specific pilots who had been flying the longest, who had the most specific missions behind them, the most specific hours in the specific aircraft, the most specific experience of the specific thing that the specific combat required. This is counterintuitive in one sense. The pilots with the most experience also had the most specific knowledge of what being shot down was actually like, but it is consistent with the specific logic of the functional approach to fear management that George described. The specific pilots with the most specific experience had the most specific evidence that they were capable of the specific thing. They had survived more missions. They had been in more specific tight situations. They had the specific evidence, accumulated over the specific missions, that the specific capabilities they had developed were real, and that the specific capabilities could keep them alive in the specific conditions of the specific combat. The specific additional weight of the specific shoot-down was a real weight, but was a weight added to a foundation of specific demonstrated capability that the newest pilots did not have. George had been flying since 1940. By 1943, when the Thursday happened, he had 3 years of the specific combat flying and the specific accumulated experience of the specific capable pilot. The specific weight of the Thursday was real. The specific foundation that the 3 years had built was also real. He flew on Thursday from a foundation. The new pilots, the ones who were shot down early, before the foundation was established, had a different specific calculation. Some of them returned to flying with the same resolve that George brought. Some of them found, in the specific conditions of their specific circumstances, that the specific foundation was not yet sufficient to support the specific weight. They were not lesser people for finding this. They were people in a different specific situation who made the specific appropriate decision for the specific situation they were in. The specific humility that this requires, the specific acknowledgement that the courage to fly again is not available to every person in every circumstance, and that the availability does not determine the worth of the person, is part of the full accounting that George's story requires alongside the dramatic account of the Thursday. He had the foundation. He flew. The people who did not have the foundation, who were shot down too early, in the wrong specific conditions, at the wrong specific moment, deserve the specific acknowledgement that their specific situation was genuinely different, and that the specific decision they made in their specific situation was not necessarily the less courageous one. He flew on Thursday. He had the foundation. The foundation made the Thursday possible. That is a specific accounting of the specific courage that the specific experience produced in the specific person. The full accounting includes the foundation as well as the Thursday. The specific people who made the Thursday possible, the specific French farmer and the specific resistance network, and the specific chain of people who moved him back to England, deserve the specific attention that George gave him in the memoir and that this episode gives him here. The escape and evasion networks of occupied France. The specific organizations that moved down Allied airmen from the specific places where they landed to the specific places where they could be extracted were some of the most remarkable institutions of the Second World War. And they were institutions built entirely from the specific acts of the specific ordinary people who chose to take the specific risk. The risk was specific and extreme. The French civilian who headed down Allied airmen was, under the specific rules of the German occupation, subject to specific punishment that could include execution. The specific German administration of occupied France was not uniformly brutal. The specific enforcement of the specific rules varied by region and by the specific local command and by the specific moment in the war. But the specific risk was real, and the specific people who took it were taking it with the specific knowledge that the specific consequences of being caught were the specific consequences of the occupation. George could not name most of them. The specific security of a specific network required that he not know most of the names. The specific principle of the cell structure, in which each specific person knew only the specific people immediately adjacent to them in the specific chain, so that the capture of any specific person produced a minimum specific compromise of the specific overall network. He knew faces. He knew the specific quality of the specific acts. He did not know the names. He honored them in the memoir in the specific form that the specific security of the specific survivors required, the specific description of the specific acts without the specific names, with the specific gratitude of the specific person who had been the specific beneficiary of the specific risk. The French farmer who opened the door at the specific dawn is in the memoir, not by name, by the specific face and the specific decision and the specific quality of the act. He is in the record in the form that was available. The specific question of what it means to take the specific risk that the French farmer took, the specific risk of the ordinary person in the occupied country who chooses to help the specific person at the specific door despite the specific consequences, is a question that the escape and evasion literature of the Second World War addresses with considerable depth and that this episode can only touch. The specific answer that George's account provides is that the specific ordinary courage of the specific French farmer was, for the specific person who was a beneficiary of it, the most visible and the most moving expression of the specific human commitment to the specific other person that he encountered in the specific war, not the combat courage. The combat courage was his own, and he understood it from the inside. The civilian courage, the courage of the person who was not a soldier, who had not been trained for specific risk, who had the specific everything to lose and the specific nothing to gain except the specific honoring of the specific human obligation to the specific person at the door, was a specific courage that stayed with him. He wrote about it more than he wrote about his own flying. The memoir devotes more pages to the French countryside and the specific people who move him than to any specific combat mission. This is the specific proportion that the specific experience produced. The specific missions were the work. The specific French farmer was a revelation. The revelation was, there are specific people in specific places under specific conditions who make specific decisions based on a specific human obligation to the specific other person, regardless of the specific consequences to themselves. These specific people exist. He had encountered them. The specific war had put him in the specific place where the specific encounter was possible, and the specific encounter had produced the specific revelation. He carried the revelation for the rest of his life. The specific 51 years from the Saturday night in the French ditch to the 1994 death. He honored it in the memoir. He honored it in the specific quality of the life he built after the war. The specific generosity to specific people in specific situations that his family and friends noted as a defining quality of the specific person he had become. The French farmer had shown him something. He had spent 51 years trying to match it. He flew on Thursday. He had escaped on Saturday through the help of the specific people who took the specific risk. The Thursday flying was possible because the Saturday people had made it possible. He knew this. He wrote it down. The memoir is in the record. The specific French farmer, without a name, with a face, with the specific quality of the specific act, is in the record. The specific gratitude of the specific pilot is in the record. Subscribe and share this with someone who needs to hear it. The story of the pilot who flew again is also the story of the people who made the flying again possible. The specific ordinary people in the specific occupied country who opened their specific doors to the specific stranger and took the specific risk. Both stories are in the same story. Both deserve to be in the record. He flew on Thursday because the French farmer opened the door on Sunday morning. Both acts are the specific forms of the specific courage that the specific war required of the specific people who were in it. That is the full accounting. That is a pilot who was shot down, captured, escaped, and flew again. The specific culture of the RAF mess, the specific social world of the combat aviator's daily life alongside the combat flying, is worth examining because it illuminates the specific human context in which the specific psychological management of the specific experience occurred. The mess was a specific social institution that the RAF used to manage the specific thing that the combat flying produced in the specific people who did it, not the institution in the sense of the designed therapeutic intervention. The mess was not designed as a psychological support system. It was designed as a specific social space of the specific community of the specific people who were doing the specific work, and it performed its therapeutic function as a byproduct of the specific social function. The specific rituals of the mess, the drinking, the singing, the specific jokes, and the specific stories, and the specific dark humor that the specific people in the specific situation developed were the specific forms of the specific social processing of the specific experience. The men who came back from a specific mission sat in the specific mess and drank with the men who had also come back and were not going to speak about the specific experience of the specific mission in the specific terms that the specific experience required, but who were going to be together in the specific way of people who have been through the same thing and who do not need to speak it to acknowledge it. George describes a mess in the memoir with the specific affection of a man who understood what was, for even if he could not have named its function at the time. He describes the specific people, the specific faces in the specific chairs, the specific voices in the specific room, with the same specificity that Agnes brought to the faces in the ward. He had paid attention. The faces stayed. The specific empty chairs, the specific people who had been in the specific chairs and who were not there anymore, are also in the memoir, not sentimentally, with the specific matter-of-fact quality of a person who has learned the specific discipline of the fighter-pilot's relationship to the lost, which was to acknowledge the specific loss and then to continue flying. Because continuing to fly was a specific form of honoring the specific loss that the specific situation allowed. He had lost friends, many of them. The specific accumulation of the specific losses across the specific years of the Battle of Britain and the specific subsequent missions was a specific weight that the memoir carries without dramatizing. He had been in the mess when the specific chairs were full and when the specific chairs were empty, and he had continued to fly after the empty chairs in the same way that he had continued to fly after Thursday, because the continuing to fly was a specific thing that the specific situation required, and because he was a specific person who had decided to provide it. The specific discipline of the fighter-pilot's relationship to loss, the specific not dwelling, the specific continuing, the specific acknowledgement and forward, is one that the psychological research on elite military communities has studied with increasing sophistication, and the findings confirm what the memoir account suggests. The specific communities that function most effectively under sustained high-casualty conditions are the ones that develop specific rituals for acknowledging the loss and then returning to work. The specific toast, the specific moment of silence, the specific permission to feel, that is followed by the specific return to function. The mess provided this. Not perfectly. The specific losses were sometimes too many and too fast for the specific ritual to absorb them. Not always. The specific individual responses to the specific losses were as varied as the specific individuals. But functionally, for most of the specific men most of the time, the mess performed the specific social work that the specific situation required. George benefited from the mess. He benefited from the specific people in the specific chairs and the specific rituals of the specific community and the specific culture of the specific acknowledgement and forward. When the Thursday happened, when the shooting down and the capture and the escape and the return produced a specific week, the specific culture of the specific community was one of the specific resources he had available for the specific management of the specific weight. He came back to the base. His specific comrades were there. The specific mess was there. The specific chairs, his chair, was there. He sat in it. He drank with the men who were still flying. He made the specific decision to continue. He flew on Thursday from the specific foundation of the specific 3 years of the specific flying and the specific community and the specific culture that had shaped the specific person he was by the Thursday. The Thursday was not simply an act of individual will. It was a specific product of the specific community and the specific culture and the specific accumulated foundation that the specific community had helped him build. He gave a specific credit in the memoir to the specific culture, the specific community, the specific men who had flown with him and drunk with him and been present in the specific mess when the specific weight was what it was. The memoir is an honest account. The honesty includes a specific acknowledgement that the Thursday was not simply his. He flew on Thursday. The French farmer opened the door. The resistance moved him. The comrades were in the mess when he came back. All of these are part of the Thursday. The Thursday was a specific act of the specific person. The specific person had been made by the specific people around him. The full accounting of the Thursday includes all of them. The specific legacy of the specific pilots, what their specific stories mean for the people who did not fly and who will not fly in conditions of combat, is one I want to address directly, because I think the specific temptation of this kind of story is the one that Agnes's episode also addressed, the temptation to put the specific courage in the category of the exceptional and therefore beyond the reach of the ordinary person. George was not exceptional in the way that the word exceptional implies when applied to the combat pilot. He was exceptionally well-trained, exceptionally experienced, exceptionally self-aware about the specific mechanism of the fear and the specific management it required. But the specific act, the specific getting into the cockpit on Thursday with the specific knowledge of the specific week, was not the act of a person with a different nervous system from the ordinary person. It was the act of a person with an ordinary nervous system and extraordinarily specific self-knowledge, who had decided that the specific thing the specific self-knowledge required was the specific action. The specific lesson is not, George flew on Thursday, therefore you should do the specific frightening thing in your specific life. That is too simple. The specific lesson is, George knew himself clearly enough to understand what the specific fear would produce if left to accumulate, and he acted on the specific understanding. And the acting on the specific understanding was a specific thing that the specific situation required from the specific person he was. The specific question it asks of the non-pilot is, what is the specific thing that the specific self-knowledge about the specific fear requires of you? Not what George's self-knowledge required of him. That was specific to him, to his specific capabilities, to his specific role, to his specific situation. What your specific self-knowledge requires of you in the specific situation you are in the specific moment you are in. He flew on Thursday because not flying would produce a specific wrong outcome for the specific person he was. The specific question is, what would not acting produce the specific person you are in the specific situation you are in? He knew the answer for himself. He acted on it. He wrote it down. That is a specific lesson of the specific Thursday, not the heroism, though the heroism was real, the specific self-knowledge, and the specific acting on the specific self-knowledge, and the specific writing it down. The memoir is in the record. The Thursday is in the record. The specific reason George gives. If I don't fly today, I won't fly again, is in the record for anyone who needs a specific formulation of a specific insight. He gave it. It is there. There's one final thing I want to say about George, about the specific quality his son described at the funeral. His son said he was the most self-aware person he had ever known. Not the bravest, not the most decorated, not the best pilot. Though he was all of these things to some degree, the most self-aware. This is a specific quality that the Thursday required and that the memoir preserves. The specific self-awareness, the specific honest accounting of the specific fear and the specific decision and the specific reason is what makes George's story instructive rather than simply inspiring. Inspiring stories ask you to admire the person. Instructive stories ask you to understand the person. George's memoir is instructive because it explains itself, because a specific person took the specific time to examine the specific experience with the specific honesty and to put the specific result in the specific record. He flew on Thursday. He knew why. He wrote it down. The record has it. The self-awareness is in the record alongside the DFC and bar. The self-awareness is the more instructive entry. Subscribe and share this story with someone who is facing the specific thing they keep not doing because the specific week has made it heavier than it was. The specific reason George gives. If I don't do it today, I won't do it again. May or may not apply to the specific situation, but the specific self-knowledge that produced the specific reason is always applicable. He flew on Thursday. He wrote it down. The record has it. That is enough. That is a full accounting of the war pilot who was shot down, captured, escaped, and flew again. Shot down on Thursday, captured on Friday, escaped on Saturday, flew again the following Thursday. 1 week, the most instructive week in the most instructive life. That is the story. The specific commercial flying that George did after the war, the 22 years with WWII, the specific ongoing act of the flying in the specific peaceful conditions of the commercial aviation is worth a moment's attention because it represents a specific long-term version of the Thursday decision. He had decided on Thursday to keep flying. He kept flying for 35 more years, through the rest of the war, through the commercial career, until retirement in 1967. The Thursday decision was not a single decision. It was a specific first decision in a specific sequence of decisions that produced a specific ongoing act of the specific continuing to fly. He did not find this remarkable. He described the commercial flying in the memoir in the specific matter-of-fact terms of a professional who is doing the work he chose to do, the specific routes, the specific aircraft, the specific changes in the technology of the flying over the 22 years. He brought to commercial flying the same specific attention and the same specific competence that he had brought to the combat flying, and he found in the commercial flying the same specific pleasures, the specific mastery of the specific skill, the specific experience of the aircraft at altitude, the specific ongoing occasion for the specific thing he had been doing since 1940. The war had given him the flying. He had kept the flying after the war. The specific thing the war had given him. In the specific way that difficult experiences sometimes give the specific gift of the specific capability that the specific difficulty reveals, was a specific relationship to flying that the specific conditions of the specific war had produced. He was a better pilot at the end of the war than he had been at the beginning. He was a more self-aware person at the end of the war than he had been at the beginning. Both of these things were specific products of specific experience, and both of them made the specific commercial career possible in the specific form it took. He retired from WWII in 1967. He wrote the memoir in 1978. He died in 1994. His son spoke at the funeral about the self-awareness. His wife spoke about the specific quality of the presence, the specific full engagement with the specific people and the specific situations of the ordinary domestic life that she attributed to the specific experience of the war, which had taught him the specific value of the specific ordinary thing. Both of them were describing the same specific quality from different angles. The self-awareness that the son named and the presence that the wife named are the specific same thing, the specific product of the specific person who had been through the specific experience and who had paid the specific attention to what the specific experience required and what it produced. He flew on Thursday because he knew himself. He flew for 35 more years because he kept knowing himself. He died in 1994, having been the specific, most self-aware person his son had ever known, having loved and been loved, having flown. The memoir is in the record. The Thursday is in the record. Shot down on Thursday. Flew again the following Thursday. Flew for 35 more years. That is enough. That is everything. That is the war pilot who was shot down, captured, escaped, and flew again the next week.